This episode of FuelSpillTV has been given a refreshing night's sleep followed by a free continental breakfast by the King Crab Inn. Welcome to FuelSpillTV. I'm Charlie the Intern, giving you the gas and go on all your favorite racing series. And we've got a packed show this week with 4 high-stakes races. First up, the famous Rockford Speedway in Illinois brings us a FARC doubleheader with the FARC Truck Series and FARC Larry Lemon Super Series late models. These races will set the stage for the championship battle of these two series going into the big Oktoberfest Nationals weekend at Bent Twig. Michael McKinley took fast time for the second week in a row, but a 2 on the die roll would put him in 4th and Buddy McInnes on the pole. And McInnes is going to have to face Hiram Jennings on this start. Jennings is fresh off of his first series victory at the Berlin Raceway, and he's starting up on that high line, which a lot of drivers favor here at Rockford. McInnes trying to hang on to that lead on the inside, but Jennings just has a very strong truck around that outside. He will lead the first lap. Points leader Eddie Vero is on the move. He started 5th, and he's going to get around Michael McKinley for 3rd. Here on lap number 7. Buddy McInnes sees an opening as Hiram Jennings gets held up by the lapped truck of Derek Dudding, but a very rude maneuver will put McInnes into the inside wall, and Hiram Jennings will lead for at least a couple more laps, but McInnes, despite that damage, will prevail and take over the lead. Trouble brewing in the midfield as Michael McKinley has slid back, and Dan Mayato in that 27 truck gets into the back of him and will go around for a spin. Under that caution, Kyle Pike pulls into the infield. His night is over, and Michael McKinley, once a champion, now a curse upon every vehicle he climbs into. Engine troubles will take him out for the second week in a row. Big wreck with 10 laps to go as Allison Smith gets into the back of Dale Clown, that 06, and then smashes into the end of the pit wall in turn 3. Allison Smith would be okay as Buddy McInnes will hold off Hiram Jennings on the restart to take his second Truck Series victory of the year. He took the opener over at 7077 Speedway. Eddie Vero remained in 3rd the rest of the night. McInnes and Jennings were just untouchable throughout the whole 50-lap feature. Alex Phillips and Ricky Freeman Jr. rounded out the top 5, followed by Jack Radcliffe, Tommy Winovich, Colin McNaught, Frank Daney Jr., and Lou Kirk was the last truck to finish on the lead lap. Going into the finale, Eddie Vero leads by 4 points over Hiram Jennings. It may not look like much, but the best of 5 rule used in the Truck Series is going to make Hiram Jennings' job difficult if he wants this championship. Eddie Vero needs to finish 1st or 2nd in the finale to even gain any points from here, and Jennings is in a must-win situation. He only ties with Vero if he finishes 2nd. But now we move on to the headline feature here at Rockford, the FARC Super Series, where Taylor Brillin took the fast time and will keep the pole as she leads Andy Pearson down into turn 1. Brillin is standing in the way of Bobby Pourteau's 3rd straight title in this series, and you can see Pourteau qualified way back in the field around 10th or so. He's going to have a hard time as Andy Pearson now gives Taylor Brillin a hard time around the outside. Isaac Leitner almost getting into the back of him, but Pearson, the FARC legend, will clear Brillin and take over the lead. Isaac Leitner trying to follow her around the outside. AJ Young qualified well, but he's not going to be able to do anything with that as he gets into the outside wall out of turn 4 and goes for a spin right in front of traffic, but that did minimal damage. Isaac Leitner's found his way under Andy Pearson, but coming to the line and another yellow flag for AJ Young going around on the front stretch. Officials ruled that Pearson had the lead at the line, so Leitner seems to have a faster car, but he's going to have to wait just a little bit longer. Bobby Pourteau hasn't made much progress since the start of this race. He hasn't been having a fun couple of weeks, and now he gets squeezed into the wall by James West, setting off a pile-up on the backstretch that involves Kenny Brillin in that black and yellow 20 car, his first start of the year. And after the restart, Kenny George, 3 wide gone wrong with Ben Worthington and Aubrey Wood. Kenny George goes upside down in turn 1. That's just the kind of thing you know is going to end badly with 3 cars careening towards that wall, but Kenny George would be okay. Trouble for Andy Pearson as he had to take a trip into the infield. He comes back onto the track, but The team was working under the hood on that 2 car, and he will now be in the back of the field after contending up front in the early part of this race. This is going to hand the lead over to Isaac Leitner. He takes full advantage, pulling away from Taylor Brillen. It was probably only a matter of time before Leitner took the lead as he chases down his 3rd win of the year. Meanwhile, Taylor Brillen is being hounded by Matt Pearson in the 12, Jason Bates in the 51. Right behind them, Bates coming off of his first victory in the series at the Bowman Gray Stadium. But Pearson's going to get into the back of AJ Young. He's had an eventful night, and that damage is going to force him to pull into the infield to get that taken care of, and Matt Pearson drops out of contention. Isaac Leitner would face no other competition for the rest of the night, pulling away by 5 seconds to take win number 3 on the season. Taylor Brillen would take second. Bobby Porteau, after a terrible beginning to his race, would claw his way through the field and finish 3rd, taking that spot away from Jason Bates. Sean Griswold rounds out the top 5. Andy Pearson also came back through the field to finish 7th after his early troubles, and Samantha Mason would round out the top 10. Now let's look at the standings. Taylor Brillen leads by 10 points over Bobby Porteau, and according to the math, she has locked up the FARC Super Series Championship. Under the best of 7 rule that the series has in place, there is no way that Bobby Porteau is going to be able to make up those points in the finale. So congratulations to Taylor Brillen and Arnold Pine Racing for their first championships in FARC competition. Meanwhile, going into Bent Twig, the battle will be for 2nd between Bobby Porteau and Isaac Leitner, who will be riding high off of his win in this weekend's race. Welcome back to the Fuel Spill studio as we prepare to bring you our next pair of races from the Talladega Super Speedway. The FARC Lowe Dollar Series will take to the track for their penultimate race before giving way to the ASCC All-American Racing Series, as their controversial playoff format will claim its first victims in an elimination race. Let's go to the highlights from the high banks of Talladega. Michaela Perry-Jones, winner of the crash-shortened race at Salem, was on pole, but she was absolutely sleeping on the start, giving way to her sort of teammate for this race, Vincenzo Focusato, driving for his family team. A strong relationship between the Durbins and the Focusatos, but Perry-Jones is going backwards in these opening laps. 4 wide right in front of her, and that's Hunter Blaze in the 71. Points leader by 6 over MPJ coming into this race, right on the bottom. Absolutely going for the front early on. Not a lot of patience out of the kid from Ohio, but he knows that MPJ is smelling blood, and he's going to charge by the 88. Vincenzo Focusato, he's got this race circled on his calendar, but he's going to lose it immediately as Harv Henry gets in the way in that 44 car. I'm not even sure he's running lap times under a minute in that car. He's very slow, very dangerous for him to be on the track, but officials weren't doing a whole lot about him. But Hunter Blaze gets it back together and takes the lead with a little help from the not as slow car of John Burr. He's got Nicholas Radcliffe in the 2 right behind him, followed by Sean Boyd making his debut in that 64 car for M&J Racing. That bright orange car is hard to miss. Patrick Ashcroft goes up and spoke at the start of lap 11. He was not running too well, all the way down in 32nd. Daniel Sharp gets together with his TM Master Cup Series teammate Daniel Lecklater, and he's going to go spinning down to the inside, glancing off of the wall. That's going to bring out the first caution of the day on lap 21. Lots of fans thought the FARC cars would be wrecking early and often, but obviously they don't remember last year's race, which only had 1 caution. Vincenzo Focusato gets himself back into the lead on the restart, but he's got Skeeter Farnsworth and Sean Boyd in pursuit. Focusato doesn't race too often as he's still trying to get his career off the ground, but he loves coming to Talladega, but he's about to lose the lead to Sean Boyd, M&J's latest young prospect. Sean Boyd is an 18-year-old late model racer from Alabama, so this is a home race for him. He's obviously handling himself pretty well in his first race on a big track, but he's being challenged by Skeeter Farnsworth in that 24 car. Michaela Perry-Jones after a first round of pit stops, is back in contention as she tries to help Sergei Yakovsky into the lead. But further back, contact between Todd Stater and Silas White is going to send Daniel Sharp hard into the inside wall. That's almost the same place he spun last time, but obviously a much, much bigger hit. And a bad hit right to that driver's side. Watch Todd Stater. Silas White bobbled in front of him. The two just came together, and Daniel Sharp was just along for the ride. Sharp would be taken to the hospital and diagnosed with a concussion, so that's going to cut his racing short for the year, it would seem, which is a shame because he was very consistent in that 77 car and was an outside shot for the championship lead for a few weeks. But Michaela Perry-Jones would pull away once the race got restarted, but it wouldn't stay green for long as Hunter Blaze goes around in the back, collecting a couple other cars, Anthony Griffith and Mo Lester in that 3. Disaster for Hunter Blaze, as this wreck is going to take him out of the points. Meanwhile, his rival, Michaela Perry-Jones, is going to score all of the points as she will lead the rest of the way. Skeeter Farnsworth gives chase, but it's not going to be enough. Michaela Perry-Jones won the pole, fell back early, but now has recovered to take the win, leading the most laps along the way and scoring a perfect 100 points. Michaela Perry-Jones also becomes the first driver to win 4 races in a single low-dollar series season since Ebenezer Quiggles did it in 2012 under the twin race format. We've had a lot of 3-time winners since then, but 4 has been elusive. Skeeter Farnsworth picks up his best career finish as he was chasing MPJ across the finish line. Billy Ray Smith-Thompson behind them. His best finish of the year in just 3rd place. In a very off year for Billy Ray. Not helped, I'm sure, by his big accident at Nelson Ledges earlier in the year. Sergei Yakovsky and Sean Boyd in his debut for M&J Racing round out the top 5, followed by Vincenzo Focusato. He always looks forward to his annual trip to Talladega and brings home a decent finish this year. Mauro Adachi and Taylor Matthews are looking to remain relevant in the championship fight as we head into Bent Twig. Danica Hollifield scores a 9th place for SWH Racing. That kind of result has been very hard to come by for this team, but Hollifield has just picked up their 4th top 10 of the year, and rounding out the top 10 in this week's race would be Phyllis Theodore. Also, the tech inspectors would play a minor hand in today's race. Todd Stater, who finished 22nd after being involved in the Daniel Sharp wreck, was penalized 25 points for being underweight. Now looking at the point standings heading into Bent Twig, the season finale, Michaela Perry-Jones has taken the lead and now holds it by 30 points over Hunter Blaze. With the Oktoberfest Nationals at Bent Twig being double points for the low dollar series, this should be a fun fight to watch, but don't forget about those drivers a little further back. I know we said Billy Ray Smith-Thompson was having an off year, but he's vaulted to 3rd in the points, just 1 point ahead of Taylor Matthews. I'd say those two have a good shot at stealing the title if something happens to either Blaze or Perry-Jones, and either of them can really capitalize and put together a good performance. Same for Mauro Adachi, not too far behind them. Unfortunately for Daniel Sharp, he will have to miss the finale, and that would have been Team Thunder's only shot at the title this year. Everyone below Daniel Sharp in the standings, while I believe mathematically eligible for the championship, they're going to have a much harder time compared to those in the top 5. And now we return to Talladega for the highlights of the ASCC Elimination Race. Aaron Singer, last in the Inglesby playoff standings coming into this race, threw a Hail Mary in qualifying and took the pole, but immediately falls back to 3rd behind Donnie King Jr. and Alex Carson. Carson would get around Donnie King and take the lead by the end of lap 1. But a few laps later, his teammate at Flair Motorsports, Joshua Pacer, comes up to the front. He and Carson hook up to get by the 25 of Aaron Law, and that was almost the end of the race for Joshua Pacer right there. Carson getting aggressive a little too early, although they have not been on the friendliest terms as teammates. It would be all playoff drivers at the front of the field for the start of this race, except for Colton Spencer in the number 13. For the SAR division, he sits 10th. First car to drop out of the race would be Winston Orwell on lap number 13. There's some smoke pouring out the back of that Inglesby, but we would stay green. until Joshua Pacer blows up a few laps later. He was sitting in a very good spot coming into this race. He won the opening round of the playoffs at Kansas, wrecked but still finished in the top 5 at Salem, but dropping out early could prove disastrous if his rivals don't have any trouble. After this race, the top 3 in each division's playoff standings would move on to round 2. Dan Richards, the SAR division leader and regular season champion, would also have trouble under the ensuing caution. The Team Thunder crew would take car number 7 behind the wall, but Richards, as the regular season champion, does have a free pass into round 2 if he needs it. Donnie King Jr. would lead on the restart, but he gets a slow start, allowing Alex Carson to get by, along with Stefan Wlodarczyk. Despite having 4 wins on the season, he's on the outside looking in going into round 2, and he's really trying to capitalize on Joshua Pacer's misfortunes. Johnson Clapp in the 69 Inglesby for McDermott Motorsports climbs up into this battle now. He sits in a very familiar position. He almost won this race last year. Aaron Law cuts down a tire and he hits the pit lane on lap 30. He was tied for second in the SAR playoff standings with his teammate Donnie King, but this is going to set him back and possibly put him under attack from Jim Hayes, who won last week's race at Salem but was still on the outside looking in for round 2. But a debris caution would fly for Law's troubles and prevent him from losing too much time. Alex Carson, the hood goes up on the 99. He was reporting some engine trouble coming into the pit lane, and eventually the Lennard regular season champion will go behind the wall and out of the race. But like Dan Richards, he also has a free pass into round 2 of the playoffs. The timing of that caution worked out very conveniently for Aaron Law, as he will get out with the lead until engine troubles strike him right after the restart. And like what happened with so many of the other playoff drivers early on in this race, Aaron Law, the Texas 500 winner, will have to sit on the pit wall now, biting his nails as he takes his place in the danger zone. The trouble for his SAR rivals is working out very well for Jim Hayes right now. He sits in 8th place, trying to catch up to the lead group. Despite his win at Salem last week, he still had a disastrous opening race at Kansas and is on the outside looking in, competing with Carl Hampton for a transfer spot. But Carl Hampton's doing well right now as he's just taking the lead from Palmer Styles. Seth Anderson doing a little bit of door tag with Donnie Olson in that one car. That's especially not something he wants to do, as he fights for a spot in round 2 in the Inglesby playoffs. He's going to have to hold off Aaron Singer and Richie Pinto to do it, but if he does, that's going to be huge for the low-budget owner-driver. Anderson leads the second group as he tries to hold down 10th. A little further back, Jeff Little is in the same boat as he tries to squeak into round 2 of the Lennard playoffs with his Little team. Jeff Little has said that unless the team receives any major sponsorship offers, he may need to step out and make room for a more funded driver next year. Stefan Wlodarczyk has lost the leaders, but he's still running around in 7th, in a good spot to make up some lost ground with the top Lennards of Alex Carson and Joshua Pacer out of the race. The fight for the lead picks up again as we approach lap 50. Bill Calhoun gets into the way of Palmer Styles and allows Carl Hampton to get back by him around the outside. The only other leaders in this shot are Johnson Clapp and Colton Spencer. This race has been really clean and really spread out so far, but Richie Pinto almost takes out Carl Hampton as he goes a lap down. Running last among the Inglesby playoff drivers, yes, they are all still on the track somehow. Pinto has very little chance of advancing to round 2. On lap 62, the 20-minute caution clock expires and the yellow flag is out. First one of the line will receive 1 bonus point, and that's 1 point that Hampton is really going to need as he holds off Palmer Styles at the yellow. Carl Hampton completely dominated this run, and he'll have to contend with a tight pack on the restart, but nobody was expecting Jim Hayes to take fuel only in the pits and lead on the restart. Jim Hayes is asking his Liberty tires to go more than 60 laps altogether. Talladega Superspeedway is not that hard on tires, especially after the repave a little over a decade ago, but still, 60 laps is a lot to ask for, and it would just be too much as Jim Hayes develops a vibration. He thinks he has a tire going down, and he has to duck into the pits just a few laps later. That probably wasn't a very smart decision on the part of the 77 team. Even though Hayes had lost the leaders, he was still running up inside the top 10 before that caution. So it probably would have just been safer to take tires and stay where they were. But now Jim Hayes faces possible elimination, as Stefan Wlodarczyk would briefly lead before Carl Hampton takes it back. Aaron Singer in the 11 has found some speed. He's back up here in the lead group. And Donnie King Jr. is coming back up as well, making it 4 wide with his teammate Carl Hampton way up top. Lance Stone in the 97, completely unsponsored, blank white 97 there, is doing a very good job getting himself some TV time, mixing it up with all the playoff drivers. A very late debris caution would set up a 3-lap shootout. Donnie King leads. His teammate, Carl Hampton, right behind him. Both drivers are searching for their first win in the ASCC All-American Series. They're also looking for their places in round 2 of the playoffs. But disaster strikes for Carl Hampton and Johnson Clapp, who are both reporting nasty vibrations. Carl Hampton is going to fall way back and face possible elimination. Johnson Clapp was in a slightly better spot in his own playoff fight than Hampton, but he has to be very nervous too. Stefan Wlodarczyk has taken the lead with 2 laps to go. Donnie King and Palmer Styles give chase. Colton Spencer dipping to the inside of Styles, looking to spoil this party as Donnie King gets a run out of turn 4. Wlodarczyk unable to block, and King finds his way to the inside of the 37. It's a drag race to the white flag as Spencer still holds 4th, not able to get around the 21. Donnie King Jr. is in just his 4th start. He was controversially handed a playoff spot, but he proves he belongs in the series by taking the win here at Talladega. It's a big win for King and Team SAR USA. King is hoping that this will be enough to allow him to advance to round 2. There wasn't a single incident in this race, but Bill Calhoun, apparently trying to change that, gets into the back of Colton Spencer and sends him and Aaron Singer around as the leaders are on their cooldown lap. Calhoun was just coming out of the pits as the leaders took the checkered flag, so he's still trying to finish the race. And this was a much bigger wreck than it needed to be, as 2 of the Expansion Motorsports cars are collected in this. Paul Sherman and that other guy, what was his name? Austin Sanders, yes. Maybe Bill Calhoun was trying to bring a little levity to the drama of who will advance to round 2 and who won't. Donnie King Jr. adds to his trophy collection. He's already had quite a bit of success in the ASCC East Series for Team SAR USA's junior team, Southern Motorsports. Palmer Styles rides home to a 2nd place finish. Stefan Wlodarczyk and Aaron Singer trying to claw their way back into playoff contention, bring home some top 5 finishes. Calvin Hobbs finishes a very quiet 5th place. Haven't seen much of him all day, but by Talladega standards, that's usually a good thing. Greg Gray in the 78 Lennard for Ken Groves Racing ties his best finish of the year. His first 6th place finish took place just a couple weeks ago at Kansas. Seth Anderson, a very solid 7th for the 51. A solid result as well for Jeff Little in the 61. Ryan Long and Johnson Clapp will round out the top 10. Clapp surprisingly got back into the top 10 there after his late pit stop. As the dust settles from Talladega, who has advanced in the ASCC playoffs? Looking at the SAR standings, Donnie King, Dan Richards, and Carl Hampton will advance into round 2. Carl Hampton squeaking in by just 1 point over Jim Hayes, and that was the point he got for leading at the expiration of the caution clock. Had Palmer Styles led that lap instead, Hampton and Hayes would have been tied, and the tiebreaker would have been Hayes' 2 victories to Hampton's 0. So Jim Hayes, in a gut-wrenching twist of fate, is out of the playoffs, as well as the Texas 500 winner, Aaron Law. In fact, the only 2 SAR drivers to have won races up until today are both out. Jason Richards, who was replaced by Donnie King at the start of the playoffs, is obviously also out, but nobody cares. The Lennard standings are not as much of a bloodbath, but the big shocker from the Lennard division, Joshua Pacer, is out. It just wasn't enough to have one of the most successful rookie campaigns in series history with 5 victories coming into this weekend. Joshua Pacer eliminated from the playoffs after his early engine failure, along with Jeff Little, who lasted till the end of the race but just couldn't do enough. Advancing into round 2 will be Calvin Hobbs, who's been very good at flying under the radar, Stefan Wlodarczyk, who made a brilliant recovery this week, and Alex Carson, who also dropped out of the race early, but still sits in 3rd place. Wlodarczyk, like Joshua Pacer, has had an excellent rookie season with 4 wins to his name, and he's hoping to stay in the fight and turn that into a championship. The Inglesbys probably had the least amount of drama this week. All the Inglesby playoff drivers got their cars across the line, and among them, Palmer Styles, Johnson Clapp, and Seth Anderson will advance into round 2. Aaron Singer was eliminated by a pretty big margin. It looks like his heroics in qualifying and late in the race would unfortunately not have been enough to get him to advance anyway. And Richie Pinto for Expansion Motorsports. It was great to see them get into the playoffs in the first place, but unfortunately they just did not last. And there's the checkered flag on this week's episode of FuelSpillTV. Coming up on the show, we will have our special FARC Championship editions from the Bent Twig Raceway in Times Beach, Missouri. And then following that, we will give you all 3 races from round 2 of the ASCC playoffs, which will decide the final 4 for the Daytona finale. I'm Charlie the Intern. I will always be Charlie the Intern, and I'll see you all next time on FuelSpillTV.